What's up, YouTube? This is Too Raw for TV. Alright, so in this video, this is a response to a request from one of my subscribers, alright, regarding Larry Bird. Now, the other day, there was an ESPN First Take segment where they were discussing Magic Johnson versus Larry Bird. Which of those great players should be on the NBA Mount Rushmore? And the segment comprised of Stephen A. Smith, Molly Curran, who we all just wish she would go the fuck away sometimes, Max Kellerman, and Kendrick, you gonna eat your cornbread, Perkins. Okay? And what caused some fracas was toward the end of the segment when Stephen A. and Kendrick referred to Larry Bird as being an excellent player, but not unique. And Max Kellerman took offense to that, saying that Bird was a unique player, saying that we had never seen a player like Bird before. And I understand, this is my take. I understand what they're saying. Look, I get why Max would be like, how could you say that? Bird was 6'9.5", and we never seen a guy like that before. But I understand, and look, I'm not fans of Stephen A. Smith. I don't like him. I don't like him at all. Kendrick Perkins is increasingly getting on my list of like people I don't respect. Okay, as far as in the media, I don't know him personally, but Kendrick. At first, I liked Kendrick, but Kendrick is increasingly becoming a shock jock type analyst. Okay, but anyway, having said that, I do agree with what they're saying. Bird was not a unique player. That's not a criticism, but he wasn't unique. And this is what I mean by that. A player like Magic Johnson was unique. Okay, we had never seen at that time, and frankly since, a player of his size, 6'9", play the point guard position as well as he did. Now, I know LeBron fans be like, well, LeBron's doing it. I mean, yeah, he's doing it this year. He's playing the point guard position. He's leading the NBA in assists. And he's playing well. Okay, he's playing exceptionally well. Well, he was playing exceptionally well before the pandemic. I think he was averaging like 26, I want to say 8 rebounds and a little over 10 assists. But Magic Johnson played the point guard position for all his career, pretty much. And he played it, in my opinion, better than any other player in NBA history. All right? Was more dominant in that position than anybody in NBA history. And we had never seen a guy of that size to be able to have the skill set he had to play that position. I mean, it was phenomenal what he did. Another example of a unique player would probably be maybe Steph Curry to an extent, because we had never seen a guy who weaponized the three-point shot to the extent that he did. Now, granted, the rules allow him to be able to do things and help him to be able to do the things that he's doing out there on the court. But at the same time, you got to give him credit for having the game, for having the shooting ability, and to have the ability, period, to be able to do the things that he do on the court that marvelous so many different times. All right? To me, that's uniqueness. Larry Bird was not a unique player, okay? And this is what I mean by that. You can make the argument that a predecessor of his, John Havlicek, was by comparison now, a paler version of Bird. No pun intended. All right, Havlicek was a great scorer. He was not the shooter that Bird was. Okay, but he was a great scorer. Although he only shot 43% for his career, I believe it was. But he was not a 43 or 44%, one of the two. But he got better as he got older with his shot selection and his ability to make outside shots. But he wasn't a great shooter, per se. All right? But he was an excellent defensive player. Excellent. If they had a Defensive Player of the Year award back then when he played, he probably would have won it numerous times. He would have been on numerous all first-team defensive teams back when he played. All right? But he still fit that prototype of a relatively large wing guard for his era who was a great passer, an excellent rebounder, and a great scorer, if not great shooter. All right? We've seen that prototype before. Like I said, he was 6'5". Rick Barry, in my opinion, was an even better fit for a Bird-like player. Okay, Rick Barry, you know what I'm saying, started his career off as a big-time scorer. Big-time scorer with the then San Francisco Warriors. Okay, he averaged, I think he averaged 40 points per game during 1967 NBA Finals, including a 55-point explosion in one of those games, which is the second most points ever scored in a finals game behind Elgin Baylor. Michael Jordan tied him in 1993 with that, and he averaged 37 points per game in the playoffs that year. The very next year, in 1968, Rick Barry averaged 40 points per game in the playoffs. All right. Rick Barry, when he started off his career, he was more of a mid-range scorer, but he was also a slasher. He was a guy that would crash the boards when he played early in his career. Later on in his career, he still was a great scorer, but he became more of a mid-range to outside shooter. Didn't drive as much, but he became a better facilitator and passer. And also, he worked on his defensive ability. He led the NBA in steals one year. I think it was the 75-76 season. All right, so he had this plethora of skills. Like I said, you had another guy who was large for his position. He was a small forward, 6'7", all right, over 200 pounds. All right, he was a great scorer, a great shooter. All right, great foul shooter like Bird. Great passer, pretty good rebounder, not as good rebounder as Bird. You know, so you had these guys that had similar skill sets. Bird was just better than all of them and bigger. Bird was 6'9.5". All right. If Bird was playing today, Bird would be listed as 6'11", because when he played, they measured you without your shoes. Like Magic Johnson was listed as 6'9", but Magic, in reality was 6'7.5". No, 6'8.5". Magic was 6'8.5". In shoes, 6'9.5", so they rounded down to said 6'9". Bird was actually 6'9.5" bare feet. I don't know if he's that tall now after the back surgeries and the back issues and age, but he was 6'9.5" barefoot. In shoes, Bird was 6'11". So essentially, Bird was a power forward, playing the small forward position because of his skill set. Like I said, he was a shooter, a great rebounder. He averaged 10 rebounds per game for his career. Especially, he was even better before the back injuries, as far as rebounding is concerned. Tremendous passer, and you saw that that size plus skill set in his career averages: 24 points, 10 rebounds, and 6 assists per game. I do think that Larry Bird, over time, has kind of, in a little way, he's kind of fallen off a little bit with his status. And it happened quickly. Like, Bird last played in 1992, right? I remember hearing as recently as, not recently, but as early as the late 90s, man, I don't think Bird can make it in this league. Motherfucker, you got guys that Bird was killing in 1990 still playing and balling in this league now in 98. What are you talking about? And that's that bias that people have, let's be honest, because he's white. Now look, I think for the most part, reverse racism is bullshit, okay? When white people generally pull that shit, I think it's bullshit. But in this circumstance, I think there is a such thing as reverse racism when it comes to Larry Bird. Okay? I do think that a lot of people look at Bird and they see a white guy and they just think to themselves, ain't no way in the hell he would dominate in today's game. Okay, now, I don't understand that argument today because most of the guys who are stars are not the most athletic guys on their own teams. So I don't understand that argument today why he wouldn't dominate in a league that's predicated on outside shooting and three-point shooting. Let's put it like this: if Nikola Jokic could be a borderline star in today's NBA, I don't see how a guy of Larry Bird's skill set cannot be a star. But this is why I like Bird, man. I remember Bird said this a long time ago. All right, and Bird caught some flack for saying this shit, but he kept it real. Bird was on an ESPN special. It was called 2 on 2. And this was back in 2004. And Larry Bird was asked by Jim Gray if the NBA lacked white superstars. Now, this is just before the NBA started implementing the rule changes to open the game up. All right, this was right before the Malice at the Palace. All right, and this was right after. Matter of fact, no, this was right when the NBA Finals was ready to start between the Pistons and the Lakers. So this was like that last gasp of the old NBA before they did away with hand checking completely. So Jim Gray asked Bird whether or not the NBA lacked white superstars. Bird said, well, I think so. You know, when I played, you had me and Kevin McHale and some others throughout the league. Kelly Tripucka, Kiki Vandeweghe, Dan Essel. You know, you had some white stars in the NBA at that time, still in the early to mid 1980s. All right, so I think it's good for a fan base because, as we all know, the majority of the fans are white America. And if you just had a couple of white guys in there, you might get them a little excited. But it's a black man's game, and it will be forever. I mean, the greatest athletes in the world are African American. Johnson said quickly, we need some more LBs. Larry Bird, you see, could go into any neighborhood. When you see Larry Bird's, black people know who he is. Hispanics, whites, and they give him respect. Asked by Gray if race is an issue in the NBA, LeBron James said this: I don't think so. I think the fans look at the game. They're not looking at the race. They're looking at who can play basketball or who's athletic. When you were a kid and you used to go outside, it didn't matter who's the best player in the league. If Bird was my favorite player, I'm out shooting threes. If Magic was my favorite player, I'm out there throwing my best passes. It's not the race issue. If you can play the game of basketball, you know fans are going to love you. Bird, however, added this toward the end of the conversation. The one thing that always bothered me when I played in the NBA was I really got irritated when they put a white guy on me. Bird said, I still don't understand why. A white guy would come out and I would always ask him, what, do you have a problem with your coach? Did your coach do this to you? And he'd go, no. And I'd say, come on. You got a white guy coming out here to guard me? You got no chance. For some reason, it always bothered me when I was playing against a white guy. As far as playing, I didn't care who guarded me, red, yellow, black. But I just didn't want a white guy guarding me because it's disrespectful to my game. But I know where he was coming from, though. I knew where he was coming from because, like he said, the best athletes in the world, in his opinion, are black players. Bird grew up playing against black kids growing up, older black kids. So by him playing against them, and in his mind, being in an inferior situation, he had to prove himself to be equal and then to be superior to them skill-wise. So that's why Bird is that one person, that one player who I kind of think he does suffer from reverse racism when it comes to the way NBA fans view him. You know what I'm saying? Look, when it comes to that shit, I think you got to give Larry Bird props, man. That's just me. You know what I'm saying? I think he's a top. Honestly, I can understand someone putting Magic ahead of him because Magic's career, even though it was prematurely cut short, Magic's career Magic at the time of the HIV crisis was rolling. Like there was no signs that Magic really was slipping. He had just came off an NBA Finals appearance. And Magic was rolling during the preseason that year before the doctor discovered what he had. Bird, however, was falling apart. Bird had been falling apart since 1988. And in fact, Bird said if it wasn't for his drive to play against Magic one more time, he would have called it quit after 1988. He would have called it quits. So, as far as their careers go, you got to give the edge to Magic Johnson. But peak for peak, me personally, I think Larry Bird, was a superior player. I want to check something out right quick. Larry Bird averaged 24.3 points, 10 rebounds, and I think 6.3 assists. But I want to see what his numbers were in his prime. Let me see if I can pull that up. So the first 9 years of his career, Bird averaged 25 points, 10.2 rebounds, 6.1 assists, 1.8 steals, on 50.3% shooting from the floor, 38% from three, 88% from the foul line. So the guy was a unique player, man. 3 consecutive league MVPs during a decade where you had the golden era of power forwards. And I've mentioned this time and time again. starting with Larry Bird. Then you have Julius Erving. You have Adrian Dantley. You have Alex English. You have James Worthy. You have Dominique Wilkins. All right. You have, like, virtually every fucking team had a forward that could put up at least 17 points a game. All right. Or a forward that was dominant. Kelly Tripucka, Kiki Vandeweghe, Greg Ballard. You know, you could literally go to every team, Mark Aguirre, and find a forward who was a great player or a great scorer. And Bird was the best of that group, man. So it's like, to me, you got to give him his just due. Now, was he a unique player, a unique talent? No. But was he the best at what he did? Yes. And the only thing to me that stopped Larry Bird from being in the GOAT conversation is that he wasn't able to do what he did and was at, and what he was at the best, where he was the best. He wasn't able to do it long enough. To me, Bird's best seasons were 1983 to 1988. Now, the first couple of years were great too, but to me, from 83 to 88, Larry Bird was the best player in the NBA. To me, afterward, you can make an argument from 88 to 90, maybe Magic was the best player. Okay? And then afterward, it's clearly Michael Jordan. But the difference is Jordan was able to be dominant from the time he got into the league all the way to his retirement. Magic was dominant too, but not that long a period of dominance. Nor Larry. Okay, so that's what separates them. But at the end of the day, Larry Bird, to me, at least to me, is a top 5 all-time player. Some people would have him at least in their top 10. That's respect. But tell me what you guys think.